Without the right logistics, it doesn't matter how well your army trained, you're gonna lose the battle. To really understand how a soldier's combat loadout decides the fate of an army, let's take a look at 3 very different infantrymen from decisive military eras. If you open up that last loadout, you'll find a bunch of dip and energy drinks. I told you to pack extra socks, Carl, come on! This video is sponsored by Litefighter, a veteran-owned small business that provides rugged, lightweight tactical gear for the US military and camping community. Here's one of my favorite quotes on logistics, which really sets up exactly what's at stake here. Quote, "My logisticians are a humorless lot. They know if my campaign fails, they are the first ones I will slay." Alexander the Great. That's right, Alexander murked his supply sergeants if they messed up. Today we give them a medal if they don't have batteries for your optics. The Mongol military combat loadout. In this section, we're gonna go over one of the most imaginative combinations of gear and logistics. Their novel strategy was for a typical cavalryman to be in charge of 3 or 4 horses. To which you might think, why does one guy need so many horses? Leave some for the rest of us, right? But you'd be wrong. They needed the extra horses so they could rotate between them. This kept the horses from becoming too fatigued once the soldiers switched. This was how they were able to conquer hundreds of miles of territory at a time. It also allowed them to carry more equipment in their packs attached to the different horses. This video is sponsored by Litefighter. Litefighter's Olympus bag is one of the most popular rolling duffel bags sold to the US military. The Olympus is made in the USA and is extremely versatile. You can roll it, ruck it, expand it, and palletize it for easy transport. It has 3 removable shelves, and once on location, it can be used as either a foot or wall locker. The retractable metal handles acts as an integrated dolly system, reducing strain on shoulder joints. It provides separation between your heels and the bag, which allows for users to easily push and pull heavier loads, something cloth handles can't do. Click the link in the description below to get one of these Olympus II bags now. And as always, you'll be helping to support our channel. A Mongol infantryman was able to carry multiple weapons across their horses so they could adapt to the type of battle they were in. This included a battle axe and a curved sword called the scimitar. They also had a lance and 2 types of recurved bows. It was as if you had a squad where each soldier at any moment could switch from their role between a grenadier to an M249 saw gunner. It's terrifying to think there's a certain combination of supplies and training which we haven't thought of today that could defeat our armies, and yet that is exactly what happened to the unsuspecting people of Asia and Eastern Europe in the year 1211, when Genghis Khan conquered the known world. They crafted and carried multiple quivers, each filled with 60 arrows. The Mongols also had multiple types of munitions for their arrows, ones that were suitable against enemies close up, and ones that were built to penetrate armor. Some of the arrows shot were designed to whistle as they flew by as a kind of ancient shock and awe effect. The recurved bow was the Mongol army's weapon of choice. A Mongol cavalryman could hit an area target at a distance of up to 400 meters away while on horseback. They're basically a better shot with a bow and arrow while riding than I am with a rifle with my feet firmly planted on the ground. Other than weaponry, they also had to carry fishing poles to help them forage off the land and be self-reliant. This allowed them to not be slowed down by the long, horse-drawn carriage supply trains. They carried with them a meat bort, which was dried meat with a long shelf life, and it could be instantly heated up in water like a modern instant soup that I ate throughout my college days and, let's face it, well into my adult life. Most of their armor was made of hardened leather and iron, which was then laced together onto a backing. They also had a layer of silk, which actually helped if a soldier was hit by an arrow, because this silk webbing would catch the arrow and make it easier to remove. Another one of my favorite quotes on supply: "The line between disorder and order lies in logistics," Sun Tzu. Now moving on to the Napoleonic French soldier. Napoleon's forces were called the Grand Army, which would go on to conquer much of Europe and all the way to Moscow between 1804 and 1815, when they were finally defeated for the final time at Waterloo. I find the Napoleonic Wars fascinating. This guy was iconic for his stubborn arrogance, as illustrated by this quote: "I have fought 60 battles and I have learnt nothing which I did not know at the beginning. Napoleon Bonaparte. I can't imagine for the life of me why they would put someone so humble on a boat and sail you all the way to an island in the middle of nowhere to be exiled for life." Your average soldier here, let's call him Pierre, would carry some equipment you'd never see on a modern battlefield, like a trumpet to sound the signal for a cavalry charge. Back then, you couldn't just call up on your radio like we can today, unless you're like me and you lost your radio privileges the first day in Iraq for asking your squad leader, "Are we there yet?" too many times in the middle of patrol. Believe it or not, armor was still used during this time by the cavalry. The heavy cavalry wore a breastplate as well as a helmet made of brass and iron. It was heavy, but they needed it in an attempt to charge through infantry lines. The armor wouldn't stop a direct hit from a musket, but it could deflect a ricochet and even stop pistol rounds. Once they got close enough, the armor would completely protect against enemy sabers. In the early 1800s, the modern notion of a rucksack was born. Napoleon and his troops had a leather cowhide pack called a haversack. These early rucksacks were hated by troops, with some choosing to fold their gear into a blanket and carry it that way. They had to embrace the though, with those old packs. A gray coat was rolled up and placed on top of this haversack for warmth. Each soldier carried with them a musket, which was good for only about 80 yards. They carried between 35 to 60 rounds of ammunition as compared to today's loadout of 210 rounds. They also carried with them a white buff shoulder belt to carry all that ammo in. The musket that they carried was called a Charleville with a bayonet and a 16-inch blade on it. I'm sure I butchered that name, but I can barely speak English, so we're gonna run with that. By the end of the campaign, 8 out of 12 soldiers were killed or captured, so you were probably in the 1% if you got to fire all that ammo. Newly formed grenadier units were comprised of the tallest troops, so they could focus on hurling grenades. In their regulations, these units had to have mustaches. No, I'm not kidding. It reminds me exactly of how modern special forces units have beards to distinguish themselves. We can't talk about the Grand Army of Napoleon without mentioning the logistics and supply of his artillery. Napoleon Bonaparte himself was originally an artillery officer before becoming l'Empereur. Quote, "God fights on the side with the best artillery, Napoleon." His cannons were lighter and faster to fire and more accurate thanks to improvements they made. The largest caliber cannon they had was a 12-pounder or 6-inch 150mm gun. Each cannon could fire different types of munitions like grape shot, which was a shotgun round, or the incendiary artillery round, which was called a carcass. Yes, it was named that because people thought it looked like a carcass. People were weird and morbid then, just as they are today. The round had a few holes drilled into it for the fireballs to shoot out of. Similar to Alexander the Great, Napoleon had a supply line of wagons that pulled by horses, which they carried their tents and supplies in that were too heavy to drag around in their packs. Troops were not self-reliant in Napoleon's army. Instead, they pillaged from the nearby liberated Russian houses. For some reason, the Russians weren't fans of this and would shoot at them when they came by. So rude. Now let's go over a modern-day US infantryman's gear. During World War II, poet E.E. Cummings came up with the official term for the duffel bag, for the common cylinder green canvas bags that everyone knows and loves today. They became popular for civilians even up to today, where they usually hide their weed from their parents. They asked the National Ski Association for help designing the updated rucksack. They suggested a tubed metal frame throughout the bag and a waist strap to prevent sway. This was a huge improvement to the rucksack and are still seen in designs today. Canteens, which were a constant on the military uniform, are essentially a thing of the past, unless you're a hipster soldier in the squad with a beard and long hair. That's me, isn't it? Camelbacks are a revolution in the water carrying system. We completely replaced the canteen with a hump of water on your back that has a tube running from the water source to your mouth. The Camelback was invented by an endurance cyclist, and while their skin-tight spandex suits weren't accepted by the military, the Camelback was. Here's how important attention to gear is. Warning, boot camp story here. When I went through the tear gas chamber at basic, I got sent through 3 times because I forgot to buckle one of my ammo pouches. The military drills this level of attention to detail concerning gear because it actually is important when you're in the field. Not having an essential item or not knowing where a tourniquet is on your kit while you're out on patrol could be a huge liability to yourself and your teammates. The next evolution in gear comes from the modular lightweight load carrying equipment, or MOLLE. It's one of the biggest modern upgrades to military gear and equipment. And when it first came out, troops criticized it for being fragile and annoying to set up, but time has proven it to be an effective way to customize your loadout. This system is made up of a kind of durable webbing that allows you to connect any kind of other pouch or pack onto the body of the bag. This same system is used for the vest. In the future, materials that packs are made out of might be self-healing. Scientists down in the labs are working on squid-based textiles, which are made up of fibers that can automatically rejoin if they're ripped. A final, exciting major advance in gear and logistics will be robots that'll be carrying our rucksacks for us. These dog-looking robots will be able to carry around 30 pounds of weight for a squad, but probably won't mean the end of 0-300 ruck marches because they can only run for about 90 minutes at a time without needing to be recharged. So that's the history of gear and logistics. I'm Chris Cappy. Thank you for watching. Check out the Olympus II bag. It's all American made and it's authorized for purchase through the stock system with the following NSNs, which are also available in the description below.